everybody, and welcome back to the road to Avengers Doomsday. And today's film is Spider-Man, and this is where Marvel movies really began for me. This was the first one I saw in theaters. Obviously, it was the one I was most excited to see because it was Spider-Man, and I was a huge fan of Spider-Man growing up as a kid. I had the toys. I loved the cartoon show. I thought Spider-Man was the coolest character ever. I loved It was the animated series had a Ultimate Villain Showdown DVD, and it had this thing called the Rogues Gallery, and it had all of the villains from the cartoon show, which was a pretty big chunk of the villains from Spidey's his main antagonist. You know, there was everybody. There was Green Goblin, there was Hobgoblin, Carnage, Venom, Kingpin, Alistair Smythe, Doc Ock, Kraven, Scorpion, Mysterio, Chameleon, Rhino, Shocker. You know, there was so many, and they had all these things and these info with like their names and what they were and their powers, and then it would show clips from the episodes that weren't even on the episodes weren't on the disc. They were just clips of it. But it was cool to see, and without the internet, or the internet was still, I didn't really know where to find these clips, and there wasn't like a YouTube back then. I thought that was the coolest thing. So Spider-Man was my bread and butter. And so when they made a movie, I thought, this is going to be great. This is going to be the coolest thing ever, Spider-Man. So this was like the first Marvel movie I saw. Now, I actually reviewed Spider-Man about 11 years ago, back when I was doing my Spider-Man review series. So you could watch that if you want to get my opinion on the movie. It was only a couple minutes, and this is going to be short because I don't really have much to say on the first Spider-Man movie, but we'll see how long this ends up going. Maybe it'll be longer than that original little look back. But I reviewed that movie. I reviewed all the Spider-Man movies up to Amazing Spider-Man 2 at that point because I was leading up to that in the review series. I was going to post that as this one, but I felt like that was kind of cheating because that was back in the day, and we didn't really have a lot to say. And also, back when I made that review, Spidey wasn't part of the MCU yet. So technically it's kind of outdated. But like I said, this was the first one I was really excited to. I still remember going to the movie theater to see it. I was very excited. I didn't know as much about Spider-Man like I do now and stuff. Like, I don't know, maybe now I might have been a bit wary of them doing Green Goblin first because of what an iconic character it is and an iconic villain. But also at the same time, I feel like if you're going to do Spider-Man, you're going to bring him to the big screen, you got to make his most iconic enemies come out of the woodwork and make him be the first villain. So obviously Green Goblin, you got to do it because he's like the most iconic villain he's got. He's right up there with Doc Ock and Venom. So it's like cool. And I just remember loving every minute of it because the thing about Spider-Man is that, again, this is different from X-Men and Blade, where Blade, yes, is one character, but you could tell like they're not, like I said in the Blade review, they're not honoring the comics as much. They're just sort of taking things they like about vampires and things they like about Blade and making their own action movie out of it. And X-Men doesn't have the time to really focus on one character because it's an ensemble movie. And so Spider-Man is great because it calms down a bit and it says, okay, here's one guy. Make a movie about one guy, one villain. Boom. And there you go. And the thing about Spider-Man is that what makes him such a great character is what always made him a great character is that he's so relatable. He's a teenager. He's a kid. So kids relate to him. He's got issues with his love life. He's got issues with a job, paying bills. So that appeals to teenagers and adults. It's got awesome action and cool villains and stuff. So it appeals to everybody of like every age. There's no limit for when like your Spider-Man love can never end because it appeals to everybody. Even though, let's be honest here, Tobey Maguire not a teenager, obviously was in his 20s. I don't know, he might have been older than that maybe. I'm not entirely sure, I can't remember exactly. But you got to remember, this is Sony. They haven't done a live action movie with the property since they got it. They're not going to pick a kid. They're not going to pick a teenager. They're not going to pick someone random out of the blue. They need to pick someone with a little bit of weight, a little bit of gravitas. Tobey Maguire had been in a couple of movies. Up until that point, he'd proven himself as, I think, a dramatic actor. Sam Raimi, being the director, was a big fan of comics and Spidey and stuff, and Tobey was too. And so together they had a good repertoire. So, boom, you let them go. And Sam Raimi, obviously, a horror movie icon, legend with Evil Dead, Army of Darkness. The man just understands horror. So him doing Spider-Man just feels like night and day. But, he's the director that can, he doesn't have to throw his horror elements all over the property. Like you would think, like there's a thing like when to look at Batman, for example, like Tim Burton comes into Batman. He makes it a bit darker, maybe a little bit too dark when you look at Batman Returns because it's a bit more of Tim Burtonisms in there. But Sam Raimi knows how to like pull it back and use it in spots. I'm not saying that there isn't moments in the movie where Raimi uses his horror elements, but he knows when to do it. He doesn't overload you with it. And Raimi actually will be coming back in the MCU many reviews from now that we'll see. But for the first Spider-Man movie, obviously, it's a really simple beginning. You start off with showing off Peter Parker. You establish who he is, what's going on with his life. Boom, spider bite, and it's just a really great setup movie. Like how it really builds to everything. Like the first act is, we see Peter Parker, we see Norman Osborn, we see their situations. We see Peter get bit by the spider, Norman go under the lab accident to become the Green Goblin, and then it slowly builds. Peter learns about his powers. The Green Goblin starts killing people off to make Norman happy. The sort of duality of that whole thing. And I loved that they did the mirror thing where he talks to the Green Goblin in the mirror, because that was something like from the TV show. I remember where like the Goblin would like talk to Norman Osborn in reflections. And I do like that kind of tortured Jekyll and Hyde kind of Green Goblin thing where he's not really the most, Norman Osborn's not like the most redeemable character in Spider-Man lore, but he's not a terrible person. It's just the Green Goblin brings out the worst in him, I think, is kind of how that goes. And that's what they've kind of leaned into here a little bit, where it's like, yeah, Norman Osborn's kind of an ass, but he's trying his best. But also the Green Goblin is kind of taking those things and twisting it to new levels. And then, of course, you got Peter, dealing with his crush on Mary Jane and dealing with the death of Uncle Ben. And obviously dealing with all that setup at the beginning of the film. And so it's a really good thing. And by the time Peter, learns great power comes with responsibility, deals with the mugger, the carjacker in this case, at that point he's Spider-Man, and then we can move straight into the, second act where it's him starting to deal with the Green Goblin. And so it's just a very well set up film. You get second act, it's Green Goblin, third act, the city turns on him, he has to rescue Mary Jane. At climax, he deals with the Green Goblin. So it's just a really good, well put together film, and it's just a well casted film where it's like everybody is perfect. Like everybody just fits these characters from the comics, and they have time and effort. And these are things that we haven't really seen in like the X-Men movies, or even, well, Blade really doesn't have characterization too much, but even in X-Men, there wasn't like a lot of time to really situate and really feel for these characters. So like Mary Jane, we don't see a ton of it, but we know that she comes from a rough home life. We hear the parents arguing, the yelling, how she wants to escape. We see Peter's relationship with Aunt May and Uncle Ben. We see how painful it is for him to kind of throw the last thing Uncle Ben says at him in his face and then feel bad about it after he passes away, and like how he wants to honor him and move forward from that point. And then Harry dealing with the not love of his father, but the fact that his father seems to be enamored with Peter and not himself, and nothing he does is good enough. And there's just enough of that to go around where there's enough characterization in these things. And again, obviously this being the beginning of a trilogy, of a film series that they knew they were going to make more of, there's bits and threads that they leave off at the end, but it feels like everybody gets like their moment. No one feels like neglected. It's not like a character is just there for 5 seconds and it's like, well, that character didn't go anywhere. Oh, that character didn't go anywhere. You got the Daily Bugle stuff. You got Jameson, Betty Brant, a little young Elizabeth Banks in like one of her first roles. Bill Nunn as Robbie, who doesn't really get a lot of time. I wish he had more. I know like in the cartoon show there was a bit more with Peter and Robbie, but I would have loved to see more of that in these movies, but they didn't really do that. But Jameson, J.K. Simmons being, key, like he was Jameson from the cartoon show brought to life, like spot on. Like I know Ed Asner did the voice of Jameson in the cartoon show, but it was perfect prime. And there's a reason why, even now we haven't really had another J. Jonah Jameson in the live action series that wasn't played by J.K. Simmons. Even when they did like Spectacular Spider-Man and they brought Jameson in, he was heavily influenced by J.K. Simmons' performance. So it's like the man nailed it, like perfect, spot on. Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn was great. He really nailed that kind of businessman tycoon, kind of doesn't really care about his son that much, kind of has this dark personality thing that even I think I saw from like Osborn in the cartoon show. And that was really my basis for a lot of this, like really loving the cartoon show and then seeing it all come to life. The one thing that I was always sort of on the fence with was the organic web shooters for Peter. I know this was a big thing that people were very upset about when the movie first came out, because Sam Raimi didn't believe that Peter could build his own web shooters. I think it was him. I don't think it was the writer. I think it was Sam Raimi. He didn't think Peter could come up with the web shooters. I'm okay with that. I've always kind of been a little bit more on the fence of how exactly did Peter come up with the science to make the webs as strong as they are. So in that respect, I think that's why they kind of went with the organic stuff, just to eliminate that problem of, well, how does he build that? But I would have probably liked web shooters, but I did kind of like the organic webs, and that did lead to that funny part where he's trying off the web hands and he does the Shazam reference and stuff. There's a bunch of like superhero references to like other things throughout these movies. But I think it's a really good movie because it tells the origin story really well, and then it goes straight into the main villain, and it feels earned, if that makes sense. And then we're going to talk about this more as we go to the next couple of Marvel movies, because the next couple of Marvel movies are not all hits coming up. It's going to be questionable, but they do a good job of setting everything up. The beginning is used to set up Peter and Norman, and there's enough time spent on both of them. They see each other enough, and that's another thing. You want your hero to meet your villain, like as fast as you can. And so in this case, they meet 5 minutes in, and then they meet again 30 minutes later into the movie, almost 40 minutes into the movie, when it's the World Unity Festival, and that's when the full conflict really kickstarts. An hour and or whatever the hell, and that's what you want. You want to have your villain and hero, you want them to meet early. I don't mean to jump ahead, but the next movie we're going to look at is a prime example of how not to do what Spider-Man very well did, very correctly did. But I think that's really good. The CGI, I still think it holds up pretty well. I know obviously there's like spots where like the Peter jumping over the roofs when he's not in the costume early on in the movie is fake as hell, because there's no way you can cheat that. It's Tobey Maguire just fake jumping, and then there's spots when he's in the costume with the ski mask thing where it's obviously you can tell like some of that CGI. But what I like about it is that they did a good job of the shots that obviously needed to be CGI, where he does like crazy Spider-Man stuff, was good, and then like they would cut to like physical shots of him actually sitting on something or looking at something or holding on to something, and that adds the authenticity. I think that helps a lot. So it's like there's things like with the Green Goblin, like there's bits where and I think I said this in my first review of it, where it's like I like that you'll see him jump on the glider and the glider will be CGI and he'll be CGI, but then they'll do close-up shots of him and it's real, or they'll do like a prop shot where it's like he's up on something, he's up on like a dolly and the glider's flying down low. Obviously not every shot can do that because it's stuff that they have to do that's got to be crazier than that, but when they do that stuff, I think it's really wet in it, and the CGI holds up really well. Obviously the web camera had issues. They couldn't do a lot of crazy camera work with the web swinging just yet. They saved it for the last shot because obviously it probably was very expensive to animate the camera to go back and to do this wild shot, which is why the only shot in the movie that has like crazy camera motions as Peter swings all over the place is the final shot in the movie, because they just probably didn't have the time or the money to animate a camera that could do all that stuff. But obviously that's something that they were excited to put in the sequels. Obviously a camera that wasn't like glued to Peter like every 5 seconds. But great action sequences, and just a great focus. It knows what to do. It's not setting up 80 different movies. It's not setting up a whole bunch of other stuff. It's not trying to tease a sequel. It's not trying to emulate certain things. It's trying to be its own thing, but also honor like the comics and the TV show and everything that came kind of before it by doing different things, by taking different things, and just focusing on a really tight script. David Cope, I think, did a really good job of keeping that stuff all in order, and really making it clean, I guess is the best way. That's the best way I can call Spider-Man. It's a very clean movie. Everything fits really well. It connects the dominoes, fall into each other really, really well. There's really nothing in it that I absolutely like hate or despise in any real way. I guess if I really had to nitpick on something, aside from like the camera shots with the web swinging, obviously it's a little stay on the CGI for some of the stuff. I will say sometimes, and it's rare, the lighting and the way the costume was lit, sometimes Peter's blue looks black or dark blue, and I hate that in the costume. I really want the blue to be blue. Like, it should be popping, like popped blue. Like, jumping ahead to like Tom Holland's first Spider-Man suit in Homecoming, like that's a blue that pops. Like, no matter what time of the day, no matter where we are, you see that blue. But in some shots here, and that just kind of irks me a little bit. Other than that, I really don't have a problem with that. I think everything, there's not like a ton of plot holes. It's not like something that doesn't make a bunch of sense. I guess maybe the one funny thing I would probably just throw is that, why, like Norman kills off the evil other science group because they need to make up a name because I guess they couldn't use something else from comics, or there isn't really one. And then the Osborn board members just decide to kick him out and sell the company. And it's just like, wait, but why? The governor general guy's dead, so isn't all the money going to Oscorp? Why would they? What? They're selling the company, and they can just do that? I mean, they don't really explain how Osborn like made the company? Like, did he really start it? Did he pick the board members? Like, how did they just kick him out? I don't know. Other than that, it's like, just like I was thinking about while I was looking, I was like, huh. Also, second thing I thought of, and I really know about this, there's a lot of Goblin formula back at Oscorp. Like, there was tons of it behind Dr. Strom in that opening scene when they do the experiment. I'm just thinking to myself, someone better clean that crap out, because it was like there's a lot of incidents with that crap. I hope they got rid of all that. Also, they never explain where he got the Goblin mask from. I think I mentioned that in my first review of this back in the day, which has been sort of a running joke. I guess I don't even think there's like a deleted scene. There was behind the scenes features where they were trying to do the Goblin mask from the comics a little bit. They were going to do the yellow eyes and make it a practical mask with the hat, like the purple hat and everything. But it wasn't like enough to emote, I guess, because the eyes didn't have anything. And that's something that you see them try to do with them in this one. Like the mask does the retractable eyes, so you can see Willem Dafoe's eyes as he talks. But they try to leave the mouth visible, but there's like a mesh in front of it, so you can't always see it. And then sometimes you can see it, and obviously there's shots that Willem Dafoe had to ADR in, I guess, and his mouth isn't going with it, so I've caught that a few times. But with Peter, it's kind of annoying because this is before we had like the motion capture dots to do the lens movements, and so his eyes stay very staticky, and so it's really a lot on Tobey Maguire's like deadpan in certain cases where he has to deliver lines a certain way. That really has to sell you on it, because you don't have the eyes moving like you will like years later when we get to like Tom's Spider-Man, which obviously has the CGI mask thing that makes it easier. And I think that's something that going forward, every superhero movie in the day and age now in modern day needs to just do. Like, if you're going to have them wear a mask, they really should just do CGI lenses where it's like they can make it look like they're making the face, or give emotion, because it's funny that we went from this and you had to believe so much through just the vocals, and now it's like you can see so much with the vocal performance and the face movement. So I think that's cool. But they never explain where he got the mask from. I'm assuming it has something to do with like the mask he has in the house, because there's like a scene later on where he's looking at like all these like weird masks he's got hung up in the house. I'm guessing that's where it came from. They don't know. The guy wearing the suit early in the movie has like goggles on his face, but there's no mask, and we never see how he makes it. So not really sure. In the cartoon show, it was the Hobgoblin's equipment was already at Oscorp, and the gas just turned it into the Green Goblin mask. So that's how they explained it there. And in the comics, I think he was just wearing a thing over his head, but it didn't make, obviously that's not going to work in live action. So I get why they didn't go with it. But that's really my only little nitpicks for Spider-Man. I think it's a really great movie. Danny Elfman's score is great. I know I haven't really spoken too much about the music in any of the Marvel movies so far because they haven't really been memorable. But this was I bought the soundtrack. I think when it came out, which had the songs on it. I was actually kind of hoping to get the musical score, but I didn't get that. But it had 2 tracks from Danny Elfman stuff. But the music tracks were just great. Like the whole thing, the whole theme is just amazing. And this theme was really good. That even when we jumped over to like Andrew's Spider-Man and Tom's Spider-Man, I was really worried like what the Spider-Man theme was going to be. I won't spoil it now how I feel about those themes just yet, but I do feel like Danny Elfman's theme is like just iconic. Like you can't get away from that whole main theme of Spider-Man. There was a reason why it kept in all 3 movies, even when Elfman didn't come back for the 3rd one. They still kept it in because it's just such a great theme tune for Spider-Man, and it really is like sort of one of the most iconic things connected to the character. I think even today, with even though Tobey Spider-Man's how old now, it's still a great theme song. So that's really all I'm gonna say for Spider-Man. I say, and again, a pass or watch. Definitely watch this if you love Spider-Man. Obviously, you gotta watch it. It's amazing. It's awesome. You definitely have to look at this one. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Even if you don't like superhero movies, watch this. It's just really good. You'll like it, trust me. And so that's it. I will see you guys on the next review.